Hey, it's Metal Dave with you, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, and welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. I'm excited about today's show. Jason and I have been talking about it for some time, looking forward to it for some time. We're going to spend today's episode talking about the new album from ACDC. The new album's called Power Up. We're going to get to that in a minute. And we're going to talk a little bit about what can only be described as a pretty remarkable comeback for the band. It wasn't that long ago that we weren't sure if we'd heard the last from AC/DC. The guys seemed to be in disarray. The band seemed to be in disarray. There was some health issues. Obviously, Malcolm Young passed away. So we'll catch up with all that in just a minute. But first, I want to bring in Jason. What's going on with you, man? What's on your radar this week?
How are you doing?
I'm great, man. Doing fine. Yourself?
Awesome. I'm good. We've been doing this, we've been taping these podcasts now for a few weeks, and I have to stop and say it's been a blast.
Yeah.
And totally nerding out with my buddy Metal Dave.
Absolutely.
And our producer Jared as well.
Yeah.
And Jared is sort of behind the scenes on this one as to where in Broken Teeth he's kind of up in the forefront with me, being the producer and the songwriter with me and all that stuff. But the main thing I want to talk about before we get going into AC/DC Power Up is Jared came up with this show, and ultimately our sort of outro idea, which he calls a shot of rock and roll. Well, that just sounded like, well, for one, it sounded like it could have been a song title on the new AC/DC record, but Jared came up with it first. And so all this time I've been going, he and I have been talking about, well, this is going to be a Broken Teeth song. It's going to be a song. And I'm like, so I just kind of like stayed on it, and I found an old riff that I feel like I wrote in the back of the bus. It was an old riff, and as soon as I heard it, I started singing "A Shot of Rock and Roll." You know what I mean? So I think that between where Jared was with it and where I was with it, we're going to end up flushing out a new song. But we have finally put pen to paper, so to speak, and have an official song. So I've been working on this song called "Shot of Rock and Roll," ultimately influenced by Talk Louder podcast. Awesome. So that's what I've been working on. What have you been doing?
I've been listening to a relatively new album by this band called Wildlife. I don't know if anyone out there is familiar with Wildlife. It's kind of they're from New Jersey, and it's kind of got a cock rock spelling, Wildlife. I imagine the name was taken, so maybe they had to mess up the spelling in order to keep the name or whatever.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, right. Anyway, they're called Wildlife. They're out of New Jersey, and they were recommended to me by our friend Patrick Bergeron, who some people know as Pat Idle, former lead singer of Gentlemen's Social Club. He's always got his ear to the ground to cool new bands, and especially punk rock type stuff. So he mentioned this band Wildlife. He said you should check them out. He thought I would like them. So I did, and I did. So then I ordered this album. It's called Year of the Snake. And if I had to describe them, I'd say they're somewhere between like the Riverboat Gamblers meets Gaslight Anthem. So they're I hate to use the term pop punk because I think it's got a sort of a childish connotation. I think people hear that and they think about, fart jokes and poop humor. And I think Blink-182 kind of ruined that term. Everybody hears pop punk and they think silliness,
Yeah, I've never liked putting hair and metal together, hair metal. I don't like pop punk. I don't like new metal. I don't like modern metal.
Yeah, ultimately it's a way to cut to the chase, but it's almost never accurate,
Right.
but
I call
wildlife.
it forms of extremity. You know what I mean? It's how bubblegum pop is better than pop punk, or bubblegum punk, or
Yeah, yeah.
major scale aggressive,
Here,
you know,
here, here you go.
happy aggressive, some
Yeah. Well,
I,
their
I don't want to
description.
get into that real, as long as we need to, but yeah.
Yeah, but and here you go. You just triggered something in my brain. If you go to their website, the band Wildlife, they describe themselves as a leather boot filled with Hawaiian punch.
I like that.
I like that. I think it's
Yeah.
perfect. It pretty
Yeah.
much sums them up. So it's got a real kind of scrappy pop punk kind of sound. Like I said, it reminds me of somewhere between the Riverboat Gamblers and the Gaslight Anthem. There's a song on there that reminds me of our old friends New Disaster. Um, and the thing is, once I mentioned to people that I was listening to them, like all the cool kids came out of the woodwork and said, "Oh yeah, that band is great." They also have an album called Out on Your Block that I think is the predecessor to this one, Year of the Snake. This is actually their third or fourth album and probably their fifth or sixth release. And but anyway, so a lot of the people that I know that have their ear to the ground were already wise to this band, and I got into them. Now I'm sort of a champion of them, and they remind me of, in a sense, where Green Day was just before they exploded. It was kind of like one of these bands that's just underneath the surface, but has all the ingredients for mainstream success. They're like really catchy and hooky and melodic, and you could see them appealing to a broader audience, but at the same time you kind of don't want them to explode, because then they're going to face the backlash and they're going to be over popularized or whatever. That's just the selfish side of me coming in. But my point is, they're sort of at that point in their career where, and of course it's not 1993 or 94 anymore, right? The record industry doesn't work the way it used to do. If this was 93 or 94, you'd hear these guys all over the radio. They'd be all over MTV, and they'd be at the top of the bill on Lollapalooza, right? So they're sort of at that point in their career. Really, really good band, really catchy, hooky songs, and only time will tell if the world ever gets wind of them. But they deserve to be, because they're a really, really good band.
Right now they belong to you, my friend.
Yeah,
They're my friends. They can't be your friends. They're my friends, right?
yeah,
So I'll put the cherry on the top of that dessert and call it "Thank God for the Ramones."
yeah,
Yeah, ultimately. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you're into the Ramones, if you're into the Riverboat Gamblers, if you're into Gaslight Anthem, maybe a little bit of the Foo Fighters, maybe a little bit of Green Day, stuff like that. Check out Wildlife. Really good album. It's called Year of the Snake. The album came out in 2020. It's 2021, so we've had a few months to live with it. I got my copy about a month ago on vinyl, and loving it. So, first of all, what are your initial impressions? You're a huge ACDC fan. Anyone that knows you knows that. What is your initial reaction to the new album?
I think that to release a record at first during a pandemic is challenging, even if you're ACDC, because nobody really knows which way is up right now. The band could probably tour, but I think that it would cause mass hysteria and it would just turn into a super spreader. And we don't really have control of our feelings right now, because I can just see thousands of fans ripping their masks off so they can sing Back in Black,
Yeah.
whatever it is during the concert. So I'm worried about that kind of thing, and the way that they're doing it. Live Nation and other major concert promoters are kind of hurting right now and can't wait for bands to hit the road again and do some kind of version of what would be touring. So I'm just glad that AC/DC decided to do something, because it probably gave a lot of us a big smile. And
Yeah.
my thoughts on the record, just as a record, to answer your question, is um, it's familiar. It's like comfort food to me. I
Yeah.
feel like the riffs that Malcolm wrote and stockpiled prior to him really going down with the dementia, I think was the smartest thing he or whoever the engineer was. It'd be really cool to find out what he was doing. Was he actually in a studio sitting around drinking beers, writing riffs by himself? Did he have a pocket recorder and he just, sat in his room in his house writing riffs? I would like to know that. Surely there's some kind of interview with Angus where he's mentioned how that came about, but we're talking years of riffs probably, and Angus probably sift through them to make this record.
Yeah.
There are moments on the record that I feel personally are stronger than others. Some of them feel like, I want everyone who has the record to have their own opinion about it. Um, but I think Shot in the Dark was an obvious choice for a first single.
Yeah.
I realize is growing on me, but it didn't stick out to me.
I like Realize.
Yeah, and the opening riff in Through the Mist of Time, is the riff to me is stronger than the title. The riff to me feels, I feel the riff more than the title doesn't even sound right to Through the Mist of Time sounds like a Rush album or
It
something. I don't know.
sounds like a Dio song or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So you
Yeah.
get it. It sounds more gothic, but they're
Yeah.
AC/DC. They can do whatever they want. It's going to sell to their fans just by they hear the first single. I'm picking up my phone and ordering it right now. They've heard one song. So,
Yeah.
uh, but in a nutshell, I really like it. Demon Fire is still probably my favorite one. Honestly, I've had it since Christmas. It's not really in rotation enough as it should be because there's so much going on right now.
Right.
But I've probably listened to the record in full 5 times since Christmas.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to have a new favorite every time I listen to it. But like I said, Demon Fire, Realize, Shot in the Dark, of course. And I know there's some other things on here that I've listened to that I like that, haven't really uh, dug a place into my soul yet. I do know that on No Man's Land they do that low vocal repetition of and where it's kind of long, when no man's land or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's over recent years that's become a staple of theirs.
Yeah.
And turns into, like, to me, like a lot of the bands who play soccer stadiums have the whoa whoa whoa, the soccer chant,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, like a lot of the punk bands do that. Danko Jones started doing that about mid-career, and those are not my favorite Danko songs that have whoa whoa whoa. And our friend Houston Richardson wrote a song called "Just Say No to Whoa Whoa Whoa," and I love that. Ironically, his band sings "Whoa Whoa Whoa" in all their songs.
They sure do.
Yeah, what do you give
Yeah.
me your quick response to this record?
Well, so here's the thing, from my perspective. Number one, I was excited to. I mean, the fact that we're even talking about a new AC/DC album, and not just a new AC/DC album, but we're talking about an AC/DC album that was put together by the classic Back in Black lineup of the band, minus Malcolm, of course. And if you go back just 4 years ago, 5 years ago, or something like that, we were looking at a band that really had only Angus Young. He was the last man standing. Brian Johnson was out due to medical reasons. Malcolm had passed. Phil Rudd was in a bunch of legal trouble.
Yeah, it was close to like a Razor's Edge lineup, wasn't it?
Yeah, Cliff Williams retired at the end of the tour. Axl Rose had to step in and finish the tour. By all accounts, the band looked like, no one could have faulted them for just saying, that's it, we're done. So the fact that we're even talking about a new album, and especially a new album put out by the classic lineup of the Back in Black era, is pretty impressive. And now, as far as the tunes, I like this record a lot, and the skeptic in me said, are we excited about it just because it's a new AC/DC album and we're always happy to have a new AC/DC album? Or will this record have legs and will it stand up over time? And will we still be reaching for it 6 months from now and a year from now? And admittedly, I'm still in the honeymoon phase with this album, but I gotta say, I think it's got legs. I think it's gonna hold up better than Rock or Bust or Black Ice or Stiff Upper Lip. Anything that's
I may have to fight you on a couple of those things.
Really?
That's a strong opinion of this record.
Mm-hmm. But I'm okay with it. I think the songs, like you were rattling off some song titles, and off the top of my head, I think Realize, Shot in the Dark, Through the Mist of Time, Demon Fire, Witch's Spell. My favorite at the moment is Systems Down. I mean, how many songs is that I just rattled off the top of my head?
That's
to
half
me,
the record.
Yeah. And that's
Wild
strong.
Reputation, No Man's Land, Money Shot, Code Red. Kick You When You're Down, and you caught Rejection. Those are the only ones you missed, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a pretty good count for an album at this point in their career. And I don't know. I think it's got potential to hold up really well and not just be something we're excited about because it's AC/DC and it's new. Time will tell, but I think it's a really strong record on my initial listens. So we'll see. But you were going to fight me on that. What recent album do you think stands up better than this one?
Well, it's not about that. I'm sticking to, the theme here. You mentioned Stiff Upper Lip, which I love. You mentioned Black Ice, which I love. There's like 3 songs off of both of those records, and I won't go into it, but there's at least 3 songs on both of those records that would probably end up on some kind of mixtape if I was going to make a mixtape.
Wow. Okay.
I think that some of the riffs, and they were probably Malcolm riffs on Black Ice as well as Stiff Upper Lip. Those, as far as those are not new AC/DC records, but they're new-ish. Notice I'm not even mentioning Rock or Bust, and I'll listen to Rock or Bust, but the title track of Rock or Bust and that song Play Ball don't register.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what those sound like. I'm sure they're classic AC/DC by way of ingredients,
right,
but they're not talking to me the way that some other things talk about. I was going to say some of the riffs on both of Black Ice and Stiff Upper Lip, probably Malcolm riffs, reminded me of angry ZZ Top. You know what I mean? Like this, whatever that is, or like Upside Down Rolling Stones. Just classic rock, but not themed like more heavy metal sounding. Just like really funky, but definitely not a Keith Richards or a Billy Gibbons riff. Although, wouldn't that be cool to see Malcolm and Billy and Keith in a room together writing songs?
Yeah.
So this is kind of where, let's go back to Power Up for a second. I do feel like there are some songs on the 2 aforementioned records as well as Power Up that could have been written by the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
I think that style of like R&B bluesy style of putting the chords together to give the vocals some, something to sing, blues lines over. That's where, in my opinion, this record might fall short on a couple of the titles. maybe they were going for something just a little bit different, but I like it when all of the titles deal with the devil and fire. And this is obvious to people who know my lyrics,
Yeah,
but the
right.
devil and fire and the boys hanging out on the corner or in a pub, fighting over a girl or what, all of this stuff
Yeah,
is important to AC/DC, and it has to have a little bit of nasty in it, and some of this stuff doesn't have that. The songs that do seem to be rising to the top.
yeah. My favorite song changes from day to day. I really was Witch's Spell was far and away my favorite for the longest time, but lately I think my favorite is Systems Down. And we should talk about Brian because Brian is back. Sounds great to me, to my ears, but I'm not the pro here. You are. So, what are your thoughts on Brian Johnson's vocals on this record?
He sounds very, very consistent. I'm going to go on a limb now and not say that I was worried about Brian because I feel like he sounds very consistent to the aforementioned records. He sounds as good as he did on Black Ice. He sounds as good, maybe better than he sounded on Black Ice.
Yeah,
Stiff Upper Lip, I think he killed it. If you go back all the way back, this is 90s. If you go back to Razor's Edge and you listen to Thunderstruck, he sounds really sort of Mickey Mouse, and he's almost hitting the notes that the scale is calling for. He's a
yeah,
little bit flat sounding. I'm not gonna. Thunderstruck is the greatest comeback that the band had. All through the late '80s, what Sink the Pink, Fly on the Wall, didn't really translate well enough, and MTV helped keep the band alive.
yeah,
You're talking about, we're just talking about Brian's tone. When you go all the way back to Thunderstruck, some songs, he sounded great on that record, but Thunderstruck, which was the massive comeback song, it just sounds gnarly and not an attractive way.
yeah,
And when Axl Rose came back, just a handful of years ago to finish the Rock or Bust tour, dude, I'm sorry, Axl sang it like the way Brian coulda, shoulda, woulda back
yeah,
in the '90s, and Axl just killed it. So some of the hardest songs that Brian was even struggling on in the studio, to my ears, which I guess you could say it's a trained ear. I mean, I sing like that, or I try very hard to sing like that.
yeah,
There's a thing that you're doing, and when I hear Brian, the kind of master of that sort of nasty, high pitch, squeaky, screechy rock vocal, that it's not rock and roll unless it sounds dangerous. He makes
yeah,
it sound dangerous.
yeah, yeah.
And Thunderstruck is super dangerous sounding, almost in a technical way. I think that he sounds better on this, but he knows his limits at this point too.
Yeah, yeah. I think he sounds great. I don't have the trained ear that you have, but for a guy
That's
who
arguable, but yeah, thank you. Sorry.
well, for a guy who we weren't sure we'd ever hear from again,
This is the point, right?
he does a great job, and his performance stands up well. Obviously, it's a studio performance, so he's got all the tricks at his disposal, I suppose. But it's not a letdown. So much love to Brian for coming back in a big way. And we should talk also about Stevie Young. Stevie stepped in for Malcolm, who passed away a number of years ago. And Stevie is, of course, Malcolm and Angus's nephew. And he's been in the band before.
For Malcolm. He stepped in for Malcolm many times.
Yeah, he did. Going as far back as I can't remember if it was Razor's Edge or Blow Up Your Video, but it was an album.
Ball Breaker. I want to think it was that far back.
It was somewhere in the mid 90s, I think. And he stepped in for Malcolm. Malcolm had to get his drinking under control and decided to stay home while the band toured, and Stevie stepped in and did a great job.
There's a rumor about that. Oh, Stevie's an excellent. They kept it in the family. It's
Yeah.
like perfect. It was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
There's kind of an interesting thing in. I'll just chalk it up as, I guess, folklore, but word in the underground was that Malcolm had released way back then. Malcolm had released his own press release that said, sorry, everybody, touring is getting in the way of my drinking, so I'm going to stay home and take care of that. Kind of a thing, which was, that's kind of an awesome, very AC/DC sort of like pub rocker way to go. All right, Mal, he's going to party a little bit.
Yeah.
Time off, yeah.
Well, he didn't candy coat it, and that's not AC/DC style, right? So that makes
not at all.
sense.
They're writing love letters to the teacher kind of stuff. You know what I mean? They're sticking their gum under the desk. You know, they're asked to stay after school, and they think that the teacher's hitting on them. You know,
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that they've sort of started this whole thing. It says that he was on Rock or Bust, but not announced as an official member until September of 2014. That's just the wiki stuff here.
Yeah.
This is while Mal was still alive. He was just chilling because of his dementia.
Right. Right.
And it was 1988 U.S. tour that he had previously filled in for Malcolm on.
So, oh wow, that's further back than so that.
Yeah.
But the important thing, like you said, is it's really cool that they kept it in the family. So Malcolm can't be with us, so they bring in his nephew. He stands in, does a great job. And I think you were making the point when we were talking once before that I think he's actually playing Malcolm's old guitar. Is that right?
Well, he's playing, that guitar has been reissued.
So it's a Malcolm model, but might not be Malcolm's.
Yeah, and it's, no, I'm going to backpedal and say he's probably playing Uncle Mal's guitars.
Wouldn't be surprising. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he fits right in. He's family. He plays well. He looks the part. So again, if Malcolm can't be with us, it's cool that they asked Stevie to step in and do the job, and sort of help reunite that classic Back in Black lineup. In the year we're in 2021 talking about a band that put out an album in 1980. And they're still basically together minus Malcolm and still putting out good quality music. So good for them. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it holds up over time. I think it's going to, for me, I think it's going to be on my turntable for a while. And I really wish they could tour. And maybe at some point they will, but it would be great if they could really push this record. Because this is the kind of record, if they could go out and tour, I wouldn't mind at all if they played 4 or 5 brand new songs in their set list. You know, how many bands can you say that about?
Right. Well, I also want to jump in and say a lot of Metallica's done it. There's a lot of artists that are doing it. Like they're doing like a pay-per-view, or they're basically filming a movie or something without an audience in front of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, of them just playing like a 2-hour set or longer, and they are, it's pre-recorded and then it's released as a theatrical type lease, or it's same would go for a pay-per-view. But I think the idea for Metallica was to basically just play live, and they're really playing live. It's not overdubbed, of course. They have the liberty to, if they mess up or they think they can do a song better, they can just recut that tune. But I didn't see that Metallica movie, just for lack of a better term, but I heard it was great. And people would go to a drive-in theater and pull up in their car and get out and sit on the hood and watch this, socially distant to other ticket holders, but they would watch the live concert on a giant screen. Ultimately, that sounds cool, like a tailgate style thing, but it's not the same when you think about an ACDC concert, a Metallica concert, where it's tribal and everyone's together and they're rubbing elbows or more, and they're sweating and there's blood and there's, what all kinds of the things that go with those types of concerts, and that I won't go into, that need to happen for the full effect. Well, now that we're in a new world where we can't, do the grind, so to speak, where we're all just roaring in a room together with a band on the stage.
Yeah.
You could, I'm not going to say ACDC created that, but damn it, ACDC created that. They're part of the reason that is a thing to the way rock and roll should feel.
Yeah.
Not to go into my sermon, but I know you know what I mean.
Yeah, they're very much a people's band, and the energy and because they're like you've often described them as just guys at the pub, and that's the way they come across, and that translates with a band like AC/DC. They're just a working class bunch of bruisers, and when they get up on stage, they're just dudes they're just there to rock, man, and they're digging it, and the fans are digging it, and it's just they feed off each other.
So I think that it's very don't take this the wrong way, religious of them to dedicate a record. They have a reason to make a record. Malcolm is a reason. They're all, for the most part, still alive, is another reason.
Yeah.
They don't care that they're getting arthritis and they're crusty and they're losing their hair. They don't care. They don't look reluctant one bit. When you open the gatefold of the album cover, it shows them straight up. Now, it is a black and white photo. That was probably smart, so you can't really see all the wrinkles and stuff. But I'm just going to talk about the meat and the blood here.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to. They're not trying to look pretty. They're just being as real as possible. There's something to say. I got to point that out, that there's a lot of bands that won't put an album, a band photo on the album cover if they're long in the tooth. They've seen the top of the mountain and they become the mountain.
Yeah. The AC/DC's never been about vanity, though. It's almost
but you know what I mean. I'm kind of blanketing the whole process of packaging.
To their credit.
Yeah. I mean, they always have a nice glossy package because they can. And we should talk about the packaging because it's pretty unreal. And as a fan, you have choices on this new record.
Yeah. But before we get into that, we should also note, this was a point that I thought you were leading to, and I want to make this point. So much of this album has Malcolm stamped all over it, and when you open the album sleeve, it actually says it's dedicated. It says this one's for Mal or something that effect.
That's exactly right.
There's actually a spelled out dedication in the album.
Yeah, it's not fine print either.
No, it's
important.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. It's right in your face. It's not a little asterisk at the end of the credits, And I think you raised a valid point too when you said maybe the incentive for doing this album was to kind of send Malcolm off in a blaze of glory, that he could have served as sort of their inspiration, and they felt like they needed to do it for him, and that might be the reason that it resulted in such a quality album. But I wanted to point out the fact that there is a dedication to Malcolm, and it's pretty sizable, and it's right there in the middle of the cover. But you were talking about the packaging, and that's interesting. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm glad that you did, because everyone listening should know that's it's black and white, big print. Important that Malcolm be realized and recognized at this, especially after being in a band that really showed a lot of us just how to do it.
Yeah.
And he's a hero, and he'll always be a hero. He's as powerful to me as Ronnie James Dio or Rob Halford. He's very, very important to rock and roll.
Yeah.
And more people should scream his name on a daily basis. So Malcolm Young, we love you.
Yeah.
The packaging is unbelievable. So if you go like full balls out and you want the ultimate package, there was probably I don't know any pricing, but there was probably some kind of bundle. But let's talk about the CD version that you want to spend top dollar on. So I haven't held one of these in my hand, and I've just seen photos of it. And I think I've seen like a flash video of it where you unwrap this thing and you pull the CD out of one sleeve and you slide it into another, and it starts playing for you like a boombox.
Yeah.
And flashing lights, and I wonder if the thing vibrates. It'd be cool if the kick drum would, vibrate in your hand.
Right.
Anyway, that is just crazy.
Yeah.
That your CD case that you bought the record in is the way that you can listen to it. I don't know if it had, like I said, a headphone jack on it or a volume knob. It was probably really basic and just played it at a few dB,
Yeah.
But really awesome idea. And I bet Gene Simmons is mad he didn't come up with that.
Well, here's a side note here. I once read a great quote about Gene Simmons that said, Gene is mad at a dime Gene is mad at a nickel because it's not a dime.
Oh, well, yeah.
But yeah, so the packaging, I've read or saw something similar to what you're describing, where you take the ACDC, the Power Up CD, and I don't know if I'm talking about the same thing that you're talking about, but you could flip a switch and it lit up, and it was crazy, the packaging that this thing came in. It's like you half expect it to hand you a beer and a pack of smokes too. It's like it's the full ACDC thing,
right. It unfolds into a table,
Yeah.
It's interesting because I do feel like fans don't really think like this, and I also don't think that the guys in ACDC are sitting around in a war room trying to come up with new packaging that's going to make the record sell. They're trying to write fun songs for you and I to listen to.
Yeah.
I think that there was a marketing point that probably had to show the idea, present the idea to the band, probably to just Angus. But the fact that you can flick a switch and it powers up and plays the CD, that it's like, hey, whoa, wait a minute. I don't think anybody went, how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody, that's going to be too expensive. No one's thinking like that. So because it's ACDC and they're this global and beyond heavenly otherworldly giant megastar rock band, so they can do whatever they need to do during a pandemic. Even they can, when no one has any money, they can still do whatever they want. It's interesting. I wonder if they even like chopped a few bucks off of that because it's during a pandemic. Honestly, I don't think so. I don't think they need to do that. But I think that, and this is another thing I want to jump into. I saw a rise in sales and vinyl on this record. So I think there's as far as packaging goes, I think there are my vinyl didn't come in a bundle. It's just black vinyl. It is a gatefold. It has a glossy inner sleeve with well, I can hold it up. I won't get too close to my camera because it's kind of blurry. But there's this one is for Mal, is actually above the logo. It's not DC ... It's like this one's for Mal and then it has the logo. There's some photos from probably what looks like a video shoot. There's like the inside of an amplifier. And then I want to mention again that this has been on my mind with me and my friends about they printed on the inside where the record sleeve insert lives.
Yeah.
On the inside of that.
I saw that too.
I've never seen that before.
I've never seen that before either. And you talk about, you can't imagine ACDC sitting around discussing a marketing campaign or a branding campaign or anything like that. But and then you also mentioned that, they're this gigantic juggernaut of a worldwide superstar rock band. They can do whatever they want. And it occurred to me when I saw that the print on the inside of the sleeve, I was like, who spends money on that? Because you can't really view the artwork unless you tear the album cover apart.
Yeah, to be clear, the printed inside, you're not going to tear apart the album. What is this? Because actually, it's actually a cut and paste reprint of what's on the glossy sleeve. Record sleeve.
It's not a hidden treasure necessarily. You're not getting anything new, but the fact that they reprinted some of the artwork from elsewhere on the cover inside the sleeve.
Well,
this
is
crazy.
I want to raise a flag here and say this is kind of what Talk Louder is about. That's total nerd shit right there.
Totally.
The fact that we're talking for 5-10 minutes about this, man, they printed on the inside, dude.
I wonder how many people are at home looking for their album right now so they can check that out because they never even noticed it until a couple of nerds like us got together.
I would bet money they noticed. Are you kidding? I bet money they noticed because they are nerds and they need to listen to Talk Louder because this is the home for nerds. Now, the only other thing is the album cover is I started seeing glimpses early on of this neon logo.
Yeah,
they actually that's a photograph of a neon. It has a flat back, like the lettering could be plywood, whatever. That's cut out very, very nicely and tight. But that looks like real neon. Like someone literally made a neon AC/DC sign for this album cover photo shoot. That's probably going to be on, I don't know, eBay in a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, if they were touring, you'd probably find it on stage. But it'd come out on a mechanical arm for sure. Yeah. It's in a warehouse right now on standby, I guess.
Yeah, Let's nerd out for just a second. Is it in the States or is it in London?
Oh God.
You know what I mean?
It could be in Vancouver. Who knows?
Yeah. Can we get a fact checker to look up where the storage facility is for the giant AC/DC neon power up logo is? We want to visit. We want to buy a ticket to touch it, right?
So you mentioned earlier, and here's another point I want to make. They released this album in the middle of a pandemic, and a lot of people, money's tight, a lot of people are struggling. But this album went to #1 on the charts all over the world, like multiple countries in just a matter of days, So there was a huge demand for it. That's not surprising, by the way. But I think it's really cool that that people have missed AC/DC that much, and even in hard times, people made an exception and said, "I'm spending my cash on this," So good for them. I mean, they put this record out. It went to #1 in multiple countries, and I think it's a strong album. We'll see if it stands up over time, but I've been pleasantly surprised. I'm digging it.
Yeah, me too. The #1 on charts for the most part. There's different. What charts are we talking about? Well, I don't want to split all those up and go, well, this is how this works and this is how that works. Overall, to me, charts, in my experience, charts measure the activity on a record. It's not necessarily how many has sold that get you a #1 on a chart. It's activity on the record. That could be taken from airplay results. Yeah. That could be taken from how many hundreds or thousands or even millions that it shipped. not sold, not necessarily sold. Now let's talk about sales just for a second. With the killer diller ultimate flick a switch and it plays the record for you while you're walking from the door of the store to your car.
Yeah.
Like, what did I do? It started playing automatically. It's alive. That's crazy. All the way down to, there's middle tiers as well. I think Target had a bundle where you get a t-shirt and a translucent red on vinyl, like a red vinyl with a t-shirt. And then this one's just, I'm sure was purchased online, the one that I have, and it's just good classic black vinyl.
Yeah.
Which is probably I dare I say inexpensive, the very much worth the money spent, because it's a great record. All the way down to a CD, which probably sold for, between $10 and $15. Okay. I was betting, I don't know where the sales are now, but I was betting this was before Christmas.
Yeah.
2020. Yeah. I was going, I bet that's amazing, because the article that I read, or the blurb that I saw, was basically saying, can you believe it? AC/DC's Power Up is up to 1 million sales on vinyl.
Wow.
And it had just come out. It had only been out for 2 months or less.
On vinyl.
3 weeks tops.
Wow.
And I don't have any fact checking going on right now. I don't really need any fact checking, because surely by now it's reaching on vinyl close to 2 million just over the past few months that it's been out, because it's still a new record. This thing came out early December, didn't it?
It was late 2020, so it's still I mean, it's not even 6 months old yet.
Of course not. I'm saying 3.5 months.
Yeah. For it to have 1 million sales on vinyl, that's pretty incredible. 1 million sales isn't surprising at all, but if that's 1 million sales on vinyl, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I'm sticking to my words, whether that's right or not, because I'm just going by blurbs and little mentions and like what I would call one paragraph articles that were talking just about industry.
Yeah. Well, no matter how you slice it, I mean, it made a huge impact. It's a great album. I'm going to say that it's going to stand up. It's going to last. It's going to be on my turntable for a while, and we'll see, how time treats it. But I think it's got potential to have a lot of staying power, a lot of quality songs, nice tribute to Malcolm, great performances by everyone involved, and importantly, I think it's the classic Back in Black lineup. You can't go back and have the Bon Scott era AC/DC, right? So the next best thing is the Back in Black era lineup, and you've got it all here, minus, of course, Malcolm. So, great album, good for them. You and I can maybe touch base again in 6 months and see how it holds up. But anyway, let's move ahead. Our next segment, Shot of Rock and Roll. This episode, in keeping with our theme, I don't usually like to keep with the theme, but we're having so much fun with AC/DC. My shot of rock and roll, Jason, to you today is, do you remember your first AC/DC concert? What was the year? What was the tour? What are your memories?
I regret to inform you that I caught them late. I never got to see them with Bon, although I could, because I knew they came through Texas early on most of their tours, and I just seemed to have missed it. And I feel terrible, being a huge fan, that I didn't get to see that. But the first time I actually saw them was Austin, Texas, and I think I have this date right, October 13th, 1985. Okay.
Wow.
So Yngwie Malmsteen supporting in 85. I'm not quite sure what tour that would have been.
Fly on the Wall.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. You're probably correct.
You know how I know this?
How do you know that?
Because that was my first ACDC concert as well.
Wow. But you saw
Yeah,
it in San Antonio?
I did. Fly on the Wall tour with Yngwie Malmsteen opening.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
same show. I saw it in Austin though. Was it in October, the same month?
Oh God, man. I'd have to go
Because
back and
here's
look at my ticket
because
stub.
here's the deal. This doesn't really have to do with AC/DC when I say sometimes, a lot of the touring bands, they'll wait it's rare that bands stack up Austin and San Antonio because they're only an hour apart.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe they would play San Antonio on the first leg and Austin on the second. So
right.
anyway, it was late. It was late in the year '85, Yngwie opening. Maybe just a few months prior, maybe up to a year. My band at the time, Watchtower, opened for Yngwie Malmsteen, so he was on his way up. He was
Yeah.
sort of out of the smaller venues and starting to play because that show with Watchtower and Yngwie with Talus, it was with Talus, Billy
Uh,
and all that, right?
I saw that.
That that sort of middle theater size, between 1 and 3,000 people was when Yngwie was starting to gain traction with Rising Force. So it makes sense to me now when I look back, that was pretty quick that he was jumping from clubs to middle venues and then finally getting 20 minutes in front of AC/DC or whatever it was. Because it was
Yeah.
probably not very, he probably played 8 songs tops,
Right, right.
But
I remember.
that's what I remember about that.
Yeah, that's what a coincidence. That was my first ACDC concert as well. And I remember thinking, what a weird bill. I mean, Yngwie and ACDC, they just seem like worlds apart to me. One guy's a technical shredder, and the other band is just like this bruising blues-based bar chords. Just couldn't be any different. And I thought it was a weird package. I loved it because I was a fan of both of them, and I enjoyed seeing Yngwie in an arena setting because I had seen him like at smaller venues, like you said. But I remember thinking that's a really weird pairing. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
but AC/DC used to, play with Journey and
Yeah,
back when it was they just called it rock and roll. It was just, it's some rock bands playing together. There's not these subgenres and little boxes that the media has, in my opinion, messed up and, put everybody in their own, color coded box.
yeah,
But that's not your fault as your young mind was trying to figure out, well, man, this guy's like this neoclassical, power metal,
shredder dude.
thing.
Yeah,
Well, he's trying to write the greatest sort of heavier Deep Purple song.
right.
That would Deep Purple and AC/DC work in my eyes. That works. But
Yeah,
he is just a little more over the top with his shred. That's all.
yeah.
I saw them again in 1990, AC/DC, with Love Hate opening.
Wow.
I want to say it was December 16th of 90 at Long Beach Arena.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which would have been almost a year after I played Long Beach Arena with the Cold.
Yeah.
Almost to the day, right?
Wow.
And I remember the show very well, but the coolest part about that show is and that will be at the very end of this story, and I'll try to be quick about it, is there was like you got the arena where the bands play, and then you got this like horseshoe that's outside where the merch tables are. And then there's these sort of banquet rooms around,
Yeah.
Hey, well, Metallica was, I swear it was a Metallica sort of like catered party. If it was an AC/DC catered party, no one in AC/DC was in there, and Metallica dudes were in there holding court. Okay. But it was at an ACDC concert with Love Hate on the bill. And there's this room that has armed security outside the front door that
Wow.
if you had the right pass, you could get in. Obviously, I had the right pass, so I was able to make rounds and say hello to people I had either recently met in Los Angeles over the past couple of years because I'd been working, doing stuff out there with the toys, and then seeing old friends, right? Well, I step out to see if my ride left me or something. I don't know why I stepped out of the party, right?
Yeah.
Standing out there, arm's length away from security. And off to in the distance, I see it's Angus. And he's like by himself. No security, just like, tinkle, 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 tinkle. Elfin kind of guy walking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy crap, that's Angus. And because I had to squint. I was like, what? Because it was, it's a large foyer, right? And I'm going, wait a minute. And he's wearing like sweatpants, obviously he's just got off of work, right? Of course he's wearing, and I happen to have like hotel notepad in my pocket, and I didn't have a pen, turned around, security guy, oh my God, you have to have a pen on you. I'll borrow it, please, please, please. And meanwhile, the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
He's going back to the bus, or he's trying to leave or something, right?
Right.
And so the security guy gives me a pen, and I run over, and I'm like, oh my God, Angus, and like, blah, 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 blah. I just like barf on him with fan freak out, right? Oh my God, and he's just looking at me like, picture the face he's making on Highway to Hell.
Yeah.
While this nerd is like, oh my God, like yapping at him. And he signed that he gave me his autograph to Jason.
Wow, that's awesome.
I don't think he said a word to me just because I was tripping so hard.
That's awesome.
And I had just walked out of a party that was being that was basically being run and taken over by Metallica.
Yeah.
And every Hollywood's in there. Everyone in the world is in. There was actors in there, and it was crazy. It was a who's who in Los Angeles entertainment, hard rock and roll and heavy metal. And I'm tripping on the headliner. It's like I was done. I was like, this game is over. I'm going home. I win. Ding week. Da, 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 da. And of course, I still have the autographed.
Wow, that's a great story. Great story. That's awesome. Well, usually Shot of Rock and Roll, the whole intention is for us to kind of go back and forth and with each other. But who knew that we were both going to have the same answer to our first ACDC concert? Interesting.
Yeah, and I won't dog on you that you caught him late, just like me. But, we both know that Bon Scott was kind of the blueprint of everything that they ever did after Highway to Hell. And, Back in Black being secretly dedicated to Bon Scott.
Yeah. So we're envious of all of you out there that actually got to see them with Bon Scott. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, but we're also envious of people who have gotten to see AC/DC in any form or fashion just in their young life to the timeless band that they are, and long live AC/DC, and congrats on Power Up.
Yeah, absolutely. Go pick it up, Power Up. It's a great addition to the AC/DC catalog. Time will tell how, if it stands up over time, but it's a great listen, certainly worth a few bucks. If nothing else, you'll get a couple weeks of enjoyment out of it for sure, and I am going to bet that you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of it than that, because I think it's a strong enough record to stand up for some time. So,
amen.
Yeah. All right, Jason, thanks for joining me again today. I always enjoy the nerd conversation, especially when the subject is AC/DC. We will get together again soon. From myself, Metal Dave, and my co-host, Jason McMaster, thanks to all of you for listening to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast.